Welcome to the August tutorial where we are going to be doing our fall into his piece coffee standing sign. So with your kit, we're going to be doing both versions, the napkin decoupage version as well as the rub-on transfer version. So I'm going to start with what everyone should have in their kit, which is your block sign that we're going to be using for the main project. You've got a couple little accents here. We've got some little heart cutouts. You should have buttons in 3 different sizes. And then the third size is right over here. I have some items prepped on the side. You're going to have your coffee handle. You're going to have your 3 squares of fabric. So you'll have 2 in the color and different colors. Everyone gets different ones. And then you'll have 1 larger white sheet. This is actually 10 by 10. I have cut it in half because I have part of it prepped over here for you. Additional things that you're going to need today to do the example that I'm doing, but as usual, you do you. Let the creativity flow and do it how you'd like to do it. I'm just here to give you some inspiration. But I have a paint marker in white. I also have one in yellow from one that I have prepped. The colors I'll be using today is the Waverly White Chalk Paint. This is my base coat. For the transfer version, I have actually prepped the entire block here. So the front and the back is done. For the decoupage version, I have just done the back and the top. I did not do the bottoms. I was in a hurry. We're going to be painting the front. So I have that over here. And for the decoupage version, we are going to be painting some stripes on the front. So I've got 3 colors here. I have a ruby, a maize, and a sage. And these are just basically a red, a yellow, and like a gray, dark gray green that I'll be using. But again, use the colors that you like. I've got scissors here. I have also got for the decoupage a scrap piece of paper. I will show you what we're going to do with that. And I have, what else do I have? I have my iron for the decoupage. So we'll be doing the decoupage iron-on method. And then I also have my glue gun here, which we should probably just turn on now. Always a reminder to turn on your glue gun in the beginning. I always have my battery charging. So we'll get that heating up for us. Additional items that come in your kit is you've got some greenery here. So I'm going to be showing a bow 2 different ways. And I also have my Dixie Belle antique wax in Best Dang Wax in brown. And my antique applicator tool. We'll also be using for the transfer version, we'll be using the precision transfer tool. I think that's it. I think that's everything that we've got. Okay, so we're going to start by, again, you're going to want to cover your blocks with your primer color. I just use the regular white. You could use plaster white if you'd like. There's many different ways that all of the colors. You can do all the things. So if you are in the transfer kit club, you can go ahead and start prepping your block now, because this is going to need to be completely dry before we apply the transfer. So that's why I went ahead and did this ahead of time so that it was sitting here drying. And for those of us in the decoupage club, we're going to go ahead and do the front. I'm going to show you how to do the stripes. Again, you are going to want some scrap pieces of paper. You can also, literally, it doesn't matter what you use, but you're going to want something that's a little bit larger than your block, so we can kind of do some antiquing scraps. And then you also always want that when you're using your paint markers to get them started. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I am going to be doing some stripes on this block. So I'm just going to start with my green color here, and we're just going to freehand these because we're going to kind of mess with them a little bit and antique them up. So let's do the first color here. And we're just going to paint it as wide as you would like. Again, I'm just going to freehand the top, but if you'd like to use some painter's tape, if you want a more solid line, you can use some painter's tape if you'd like to do that. So that's our first color we're going to do. We're going to rotate which side we're working on. We're going to give this a little time to dry. You'll notice I did kind of drag it over here on the side. That's fine because these colors are supposed to kind of fade in and out on each other. I also did not do a perfect line on the side. We're going to be adding some layers of antique wax and those type of things, so you don't have to get too OCD about it. We can always just rough it up and age it up. I'm going to come in with my second color, which is going to be this yellow. I'm going to use the yellow twice. So I'm going to do a line here and then I'll do another line. So I'm just going to come in here. I'm going to do the same thing. This line's going to be a little bit thinner. It's not going to be quite as wide. And again, these don't need to be perfect. I'm going to leave the yellow out because I am going to use that one again. Then I'm going to come back in this side and use the yellow again for this next line. Again, I'm going to do different widths, so play with it however you'd like. Next, I'm going to come in with a darker color. And I'm going to pull in a red, and then I'm going to add the white in between. Now you don't want to overwork it, but you can drag some of the colors over the other side. So like you'll see with the red, I kind of dragged it over the yellow. You can do the same side with the green, kind of just drag it over so you can see that that other color is layered underneath, but we're just kind of blending them together, but it works better if it's dry first. So the last color we're going to be putting on there that I'm going to be doing is going to be a little bit of white in the middle. And so this is what you are going to end up, something similar to this. I'm going to put the lids on these. So we're going to let that dry, and I'm going to move over to doing the transfer club because this needs to dry. So you can catch up with me, and I'm going to move back over to the transfer club. So with the transfer club, your transfers contained some background stripes, and that is what we're going to be using for this portion for the front of our actual sign. So for these, we're just going to clip out exactly the size that they are. We're just going to clip out this whole block, and we're going to apply it on here. You will need a sanding block to get the edges, but basically we're just going to put it on here. If you want to have it more this way and have this file off, you can. If you want to overlap each side, you can do that as well. So I'm going to go ahead and peel off the back. We want try not to touch any of the design portion. It is very important that this is completely dry, or your transfer is going to have an issue sticking to the actual block. So make sure it's good and dry before we stick it on there. But for the most part, we just want to get it as straight as we can. You should be able to see through some of the lines. And we're going to go ahead and place it on there. And then we're going to rub it on. Now your transfers do come with this larger tool, which might be a little bit easier for a project this big. We do use the transfer tool a lot, which I will go back over it with this, but just that first adhesion, we can just go over it with the credit card tool. Now, if you want to cut this down to size, you could do that as well. We also want to make sure that we hit the edges so that we know that they are attached really well before we get started pulling. Going to switch it up, go over with my transfer tool so I can make sure that I've got every little area. And getting it started is going to be the little bit of the trick here because our design goes over the whole block. So if we need to do a little snip to get it started in one area, just on one of the clear parts, go ahead and do that. And we can get the design started. So once we do a one little corner like this, we can get it separated from the actual top layer. And we're just going to rub and pull at the same time. Now, because this edge isn't sticking to anything, that's why you have to go along the edge and let it release. This extra is going to hang off here, and that's fine. That's what we're looking for. If it's easier for you to do this in stripes, you can cut it and do it in stripes and not as one whole large design. Do what is easiest for you. Now, you can wrap this side around if you want to. I'm actually going to sand it off, so I'm letting it kind of hang off a little bit. And again, we don't want to go faster than it's ready to release because it is super thin vinyl. It will stretch if we pull it too much. Okay, so we have it on there. Now we're going to come and take our sanding block and we're just going to gently sand these areas away. It only takes as much pressure as it takes to get the little piece off. So you can work one stripe at a time, sand it a little bit, and then you can pull it off. So I'm just grabbing it with my transfer tool and I'm just going to peel this extra stuff off. Now this side looks a little bit messy because the board that I have, I kind of took the reject boards. That's what I do the tutorials with. So if you don't want more of that there, if this happens to you, you can just sand it off further. It's completely up to you. I'm going to antique it a little bit at the end too. So we're not really going to see this part, but you would just come in and just sand off any part that you don't like. We're going to keep working around. On the bottom, you can sand off or you can just fold it over. Or you can line up the bottom perfectly and then you'll only have the 3 sides to sand off. And we just have this last little piece. There we go. So there is the transfers on the block. Now I'm going to switch back over to the decoupage one and we're going to do additional antiquing. You can do the same thing with the transfer one as well. You can antique right over your transfers. So I'm going to get my wax out and we will switch to that. Now, when we're doing the wax on the flat block, you can go ahead and go in here and just freehand it. That is an option as well. I am going to use a little bit of a guide to kind of help me just keep the wax where in the line that I want it. When you do it this way, you're going to have to come at it from both sides so that we kind of get, and this just helps me from getting a big blob. So you're going to get something like this, where you can see where this darker line is right here. I'm going to do that on each of the lines. I'm not going to do it on my rub-on transfer one, but if you like this technique and this look, then this is one of the ways that you can do it. I've tried freehanding before, and if you've watched my tutorials, you know I have a little bit of a heavy hand. So I seem to do better if I have some type of guide. So you can see it has a very crisp line on the one side. Then I'm just going to line it right back up with that crisp line, and I'm going to just hit it on the other side. So it just kind of softens it up. And then you're going to get the fading on both sides. You're going to see it more on the lighter colors. So now we have our lines with just a little bit of dimension. I'm going to go through on the edges, and I'm going to antique the edges. Make sure when you're using the antique wax, you do get the excess off. It can kind of blob on you and get a little crazy. So this is where I'm going to go through and do all of the edges of the front, just to kind of age it up a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and do the back as well. And you can drag it through if you want. Oh, that's a little bit of transfer on there. That's why I try to clear the transfer off my table before I started those little scraps, because they will stick to whatever there is for them to stick to. But you can go through and just drag it a little bit if you want to kind of pull out the grain in the black as well, or the back as well. Because you can see where it's picking up the grain of the wood. Don't forget the bottom. But if you get a little bit too much, like I was a little bit thick, you can take your rag and just kind of buff it out, and that's going to soften it a little bit. Now I am going to go through and just do the edges of this one as well. Again, if you wanted to come in and do the lines on yours, you could. Here, I'll just do it just lightly, just to soften that white a little bit, because we are going to be bringing in the darker colors. I did get another little piece of transfer there. I'm going to grab that. And again, just kind of drag it across the back so it doesn't look as new. So at this point, we've got both versions of the block done. And with the transfer club, you're going to go ahead and pick which design that you want to lay over this. So I'm going to do that one really quick, and then we will actually, you can do that. You can get started, but I'm going to show here, because what we need to do for this one is we do need to carve out a little spot that's going to have our design. So the napkin that I chose for this particular block for me was the one that had the circle in it. This is Philippines 419. What I did was I got a piece of cardstock. I found something that had the same size or similar size circle. In my office, I had this. I would check if you have a glass or a glass jar. So I just traced this on top of some cardstock that's pretty close to that same. And what I need to do is, this is where I'm going to have my design. If we decoupage this right on top of our colors here, we're not going to be able to see it. So what we need to do is come on over this with some white. Another thing you can do if you don't want to do the layers, you can actually tape this part down and do your stripes around it. For me, I didn't want to, I was worried about the way that the stripes were going to look. So I'm going to do it this way. I want to see like where the wording is. So I'm just going to kind of mark this to where this wording is. So I know that when I put it on here, it's still going to fit. So I can come off this way and that way. And I'm just going to trace around this so that I know where I need to put that white. And I'm going to come back in and I'm going to paint over this in the white. And again, you could not do the two colors painting, but I was in love with these stripes and I wanted the stripes to be, I think it's easier to do the stripes this way. I'm just looking for paintbrushes. All right, we'll use this big one. Actually, I think we're going to need a small one first to get this edge. So we're just going to freehand around this circle and then we're going to fill it in. So once you get a good coat where we can pretty much not see through the stripes, we're going to go ahead and let that dry. And I'm going to switch back to the Transfer Club and we are going to layer our next design on top of this. So for this particular background pattern, I'm going to move this a little bit over there. There's a bunch of transfers that will fit on the block. So I'm going to try and stick to this bottom area because we're going to have a bow up here and we're going to have our handle on the side. So we kind of want to kind of stick to this bottom corner. So this one here could work. This one would fit as well if you want to take up the whole thing. I'm going to try and stick to this bottom corner. Again, we could do this one would fit. This one would fit. If we want to stick our bow on the other side, you could do this one will fit over it. So it really depends on, this one will fit. It depends on what the look that you like. I'm actually going to go with, on the bottom of that sheet, we had this one here. These letters on this one are filled in with white. We did that on purpose so that when you overlay it, you can see it on top of the design. So we're going to go ahead and just cut out. We're just going to rough cut it. And we're going to peel it off. Again, we're going to just make sure that we don't touch any of the words on it. And then because we have the bottom here, we can actually, this is the bottom of the graphic. We can just line this line up with the bottom of our block and use that as our guide. So we can just go ahead and put that right on top of the other transfers. And we're going to go ahead and rub this part in. Once we have it on there good, we're going to pick a side. And again, we're just going to pull and rub at the same time. We want to make sure everything is attached before we start lifting it up. So don't go any faster than you need to. And if you need to get in with the tinier part and really get those letters, you can do that as well, because we are working on a wood block. There is some texture to the outside of the wood, so you might have to get in those little crevices and push it down. So just work in whatever angle. If you need to come at it from a different angle and work in, you can do that as well. There we go. So now I have my words on there. I'll show you this way. So you can keep playing with that. You can add other transfers, all the fun things. I'm going to switch back here to the decoupage ones. I got to grab my heat gun. All right, once that's nice and dry, we can come in. We're going to apply our Mod Podge, and we are going to do the iron-on method. So we're going to go ahead and let this dry, and then we'll cut out our napkin. So we just want to make sure that we get the entire white portion that we have covered. I'm going to try and keep the Mod Podge in the white area. We just need one thin layer. Now we're going to let this part dry. Next, we're going to grab our napkin, and we're just going to be using the circle of this design. So to make the napkins easier to work with, we're just going to cut out the design, the front of the napkin. Now our napkins are printed in the United States. That's why we just have the front printed. And before we separate it, we are going to just cut out the circle that we need, because that is the part we're going to be using. You can use these sunflowers that are around it. You can use those to layer on top of it. You don't just have to do one layer of the Mod Podge or one layer of the design. You can layer on top of the decoupage with more decoupage. You would just do it in layers and make sure everything is dry. You could also do the wet decoupage method instead of cutting it. And now we're going to separate our layers. Now I'm going to start in the bottom down here because I know I'm not going to be using that section. It's going to come off of the circle. And if you're unsure of what part to do this with, you can get an idea of what's going to hang off. So we have this right here, and I'm just going to try and separate it at the bottom. I do find it easier to do the wet decoupage. It's easier to separate the layers. So here I only got one layer. I'm going to have to go through and separate it again to get the second layer off because we do need just that top layer. So now I know I just have the top layer there. Now our Mod Podge is still a little wet. I'm going to hit it with the piece. And because we're doing the iron-on method, this is going to give us the opportunity to move this around a little bit. And so we know where, so we can get it straight and get it exactly where we want it. If you do the wet decoupage method, you don't have the opportunity to move it around as much. Well, not usually. You can't really move it around at all. So I want to make sure that this is straight. And don't worry about this part or right here. We do have a little bit where I can see the line, but don't worry about that. We can fix all of that. So we're going to get it where we want it. And then we're going to come in with our parchment paper. Move this up so you can see. Again, make sure that you've got your wording straight. And then we're going to hit it with the iron that decided to turn off on us when we weren't paying attention. So I'm hoping it's still hot enough. If not, we will hit it again. A little bit up here at the top. There we go. Now we're going to come in, we're going to sand off the bottom first and any of the sides that kind of overlapped there. And if you're like me and you overdid your circle a little bit, you can come in here and just erase it. And then I'm also going to do my cutout circle. I'm going to do kind of the same thing that I did with the lines before. And we're going to come in here with the wax. And we're just going to kind of hit these. I want to just fade this into here a little bit. That's going to help camouflage any other little hiccups that you have. As well. So like you can see right here, I've got this little edge of paint I can come through and hit that a little bit. And then you'll also notice down here, I have, this is white and it should be yellow. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go back in and get our yellow, and we're just gonna hit that again to fill in that spot. And you could do that here too if you want. I don't feel like that is too obvious, but we can go back in here and we can freehand the bottom of this yellow here. Oh, this paintbrush has long little things that are sticking out. We don't want that. So we're just going to come back in here and just freehand the yellow. Gonna let that dry. And now we can start working on our bows. Once that dries, we're gonna come back and hit it with the antique again, and that will just fade it out. But for right now, we'll just put it to the side, and we are gonna start working on our bows. So if you wanna get, well, actually, we'll start working on our little hearts. So I am antiquing the hearts on this particular one. On the other one, I got too much stuff out here. On the other one, I actually painted them black already. And so I'm going to be using the black on the Transfer Club one. And so I'll show you the same way. So whatever base color you're going to do on your hearts, you can do that next. For this particular one, I am using the antique wax. Now these hearts, the way that they're cut is one side is bigger than the other. So if you want them to be exactly the same, you would do them this way. If you kind of want to do them opposite, you would do them that way. I'm going to do them opposite. So I'm actually antiquing technically the back of it. But I'm just going to go through and hit it with the antique wax. And I've already done the bigger one. So after that, I'm going to start doing the little stitches on it. So for the stitches, I am just using a white paint pen. Now, like I mentioned before, anytime you're using a paint pen, you want to get it started on a piece of paper so that you know it's not going to like blob out on you. And so we'll just do the smaller one first. So I'm just going to draw the little dashes that are the little stitches. I should probably do this up where you can see. I forget my camera cuts off there at the bottom. So we've got one, and then we're going to come through and do the other one. So now we've got all of our stitches done, we can start working on our bows. So for the bows, what you're going to need is your fabric scraps. So you're going to have your 2 little squares, and then you'll also have your larger square here. Now I cut mine into 4ths so that they would be a similar size. I gotta put stuff out of the way. So how we're gonna make these, we're gonna make a scrappy bow. So what you're going to need is you're gonna need a little piece of jute, and then that's what we're going to use to cut the bow. So to do the scrappy bow, we want kind of thicker pieces for this because this is a bigger bow. So we're going to give it a snip, and then we're just going to tear it. And if it's not tearing too easily for you, it might be the wrong side. So if you can't get it to tear all the way through, just rotate it and try coming in from the different side. Usually I can tell by the side that's already fraying, then I know that that side is going to go ahead and tear for me if you go with the frays. So we're just going to cut. I think we're going to end up with 5. All right, so you're going to end up with 5 pieces. We only need 4 for each layer of the bow. So I just kind of get the thicker ones, flatten them out. And then one of them we're going to go ahead and snip a square off of. So just snip it as much as you need, and then just go ahead and just tear it off so that you end up with just like this little scrappy square. And then we can trim some of these. We won't need this much fluff. And you don't have to be precise with those at all. We're just gonna, you'll see kind of what we're doing here in a minute. So we'll need our 4 from that one. We're gonna need 4 from this one. And we're gonna need 4 from the white. Dixie. And then we're going to make a little square with this one as well. Now, if you cut it and it's not as shredded as you want, you can just take and just keep pinching these little edges off. And that's going to get it so that it's a little more scrappy on the edges. So I just did one of each of those. And now we're going to do the white. Now for mine, I'm just going to cut some of these so they're just not quite as long. I want them scrappy, but I didn't want them that long. So then we're going to come in with the white. I'm just going to cut this in half. And we're going to do the same process. The white tear is pretty easy. And then you're going to want one square that is a little bit bigger than the other squares that you cut, that we tore from the little ribbon strips. These don't have to be perfect. So just whatever size, shape you want. And again, we're just going to pinch and pull these edges off so that we get that frayed edge look. So you're going to have a little swatch that looks like that. Now, before we start making our bow, we're going to go ahead and we're going to antique these. So we're not going to add any more wax to our brush. We're just going to take the wax that's on the brush already, and we're going to lightly, and you can put more pressure and get more wax, but we're just going to lightly go over it. Now, in the event you do this and you get too much wax, or you don't like the darkness on it, just flip it over and do it on the other side. I had to do that on the first one that I did. So we're going to do that to each strip, and we're just trying to get it so it's not so bright white. We just want to make it a little bit more antiqued. We're going to do that to our little scrap piece too. So you're going to do all 4 of these. And just pull these off your brush when you get them. So we've got 3, we need 1 more. And you should have enough wax on your brush to be able to do all 4. Just build it up as you go. So we've got 4 there. We are done with these. We are going to hold on to our wax though, because those of us that did the decoupage, I do want to come back in here and I'm going to antique this back up. Notice I didn't add any more wax to it, but I'm just going to kind of build it up so that it matches more closely to the top here, okay? And then I'm going to hit that edge, and I'm going to go lightly around the edge. Now I did it with the circle, but I'm just going to hit it a little bit more. and just kind of build that up a little bit. Again, that's a complete preference, however you want to do it. So that was just bugging me, but here we go. So we have this one here, and for those that have the transfers, you're here. And now we are ready to make our bows because we've already painted our little charms that go on it. So for the bow, you're going to take your jute and just going to lay it straight up. I like to put the white ones on the back. So all we're going to do is we're going to layer these, just creating an X. So just go back and forth. I'm going to do the white first. I'm putting my antique edges up, and then I'm going to go in with my next color or pattern. And I did the stripes on the back last time, so I'm going to do the kind of checkered pattern. And again, your fabric is going to be completely different. Everyone got different ones, but we're just going to keep layering these on top of each other. So you have 4 of each, and then you're going to do your last color. You can also mix these up. I like to layer them, but you can, if you only wanted, however you want them to look, you can put them on there. And I am kind of laying them flat a little bit as they're on there so that it makes it a fluffier bow. And then once you have all 4, we're going to go ahead and tie it. Now this is the front of my bow, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 1 loop for the front, and then I'm going to pull it tight, turn it over, and I'm going to do the knot on the back. And just kind of force it flat. I'm going to double knot it on the back since I only went around once. And then we can go ahead and we can cut that. Now from here on the front, you can kind of just zhoosh it up however you like, but you should have something similar to this. Now for the middle of the bow, this is where you're going to want to go ahead and take your button. I'm going to use the bigger button. If you don't, these are wooden buttons, so you can paint them, you can antique them. I'm going to go ahead and just hit it with some of the antique. Just to kind of age it up a little bit. And before we put it in there, I'm going to take some jute. We're going to need 2 kind of short sections of jute. Give yourself enough that you can tie it in the back, but I'm going to go ahead and string it through here just like you would thread. So you can pull that. Oops, I'm missing. I didn't get one of the strings. Okay, so if that happens, which it can happen, this is going to be a little bit frayed now. Just cut it again, and then you can stick the new cut one through. That one string does not want to go through. This is why you give yourself extra. You know, when I was doing the one off camera, no problems. There we go. So now I've got it looped through here. I'm going to go ahead and double knot it. And then I'm going to do my second one and cross it over. Same thing, you're going to stick the one through. You do have to watch the knot on the back after you do the first one because sometimes it blocks the hole. There we go. And then we've got the second one through. You could glue these instead of knotting them. And then you can just clip the edges here that we don't need. All right, from here we can go ahead and we can attach our button to our bow. Oops, hold on, I forgot. To add a little bit more texture, I just created a loop with a bunch of my jute here. So I just kind of went around 4 or 5 times. And then get yourself another strip so you can tie it. And all we're gonna do is we're just gonna grab the middle. So you have something like this, and then we're just going to tie it. So we're just making like a small little bow. This just adds a little bit more texture. So there you go. Double knot that. And then I'm going to clip these ones that I used for the middle. And I'm going to glue that on first. As I grab the wrong thing, I'm going to glue that on first, like I had mentioned. And then I'm going to glue the button right on top of that. And then you can just maneuver it however you want to make it a little bit fluffier. If you want to trim some of the tails, you're going to end up something like that. I have a second one over here for the other block that I have. So I'm going to go ahead and glue that now. Same thing. I already had these ready. I'm just going to put them on top of each other like so. So now we've got our 2 bows. So the next thing we want to do is we want to figure out where we want to, I'll figure out which one I want with which here. I think I'm going to do that way. Where we want to put the bow, and then we also have our little heart tags here that we can stick underneath. So I'm going to do these glued on top of each other like so. So I'm just going to put a little bit of the glue and I'm going to put that one there. You could also do one heart one color and another heart a different color. For this particular gluing, I am going to use my E6000 since I'm going to glue it to the block. You can use the hot glue, but I just really want to make sure that it sticks. You can also use both together, which I will often do as well. So for this one, I'm going to tuck it kind of under the bow here, but I also want to make sure that I'm not covering any of my wording here. So I almost have to kind of push it over to the side there. You can also hang it from the bow. I'm going to keep this kind of high. And so I think we're going to end up right about here. So I can use this where the word is right here to make sure that I don't cover up that word. And then I'm just realizing these are the ones I want to use on that one. So let me grab the right one. I wanted to use the brown on this one. I forgot. This is what happens when you're doing 2 projects at the same time. You forget what you're doing. I'm going to put this other one to the side over here on this one. Switch over here. All right, so I know it needs to be pretty much right there. So I'm going to put both the E6000, and again, this is a thicker glue. So I'm going to kind of put it in the corners there, and then I'm going to add right in the middle just a little bit of hot glue. And what that's going to do is the hot glue is going to have it stick like immediately kind of, and then as it cures, the other glue is going to make sure that it doesn't go anywhere. So we can go ahead and add it on like there, and then I'm going to go ahead and add my bow right there at the top. So again, put yourself a generous amount of the hot glue there. And I'm just gonna push it down in that top corner there. And then you can fluff out however you want here. And then we have our little scraps. Now on mine, you can see this little corner here where I have this dark white and it's really bugging me. So we can put this little thing anywhere that you want, but I'm gonna specifically put it here to camouflage this little part here. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna tack that down just right there in that spot. So we're just kind of doing a little camouflage. So we're gonna take one of the white sheets and then we're gonna take one of the color ones here and I'm gonna put them at different angles. And you also have a little heart button. You could use your little heart button if you want. I'm just gonna go in with the smallest button. And I am going to antique it a little bit before I put it on there. Again, you can paint these as well. And this one I'm not gonna thread. I'm just gonna go ahead and stick it on just how it is. All right, just like so. So right now with this one, we have this so far. And I'm going to go through and I'm going to do a similar thing with the transfer one. I forgot which one I'm talking about here. So again, we're just going to want to make sure that I don't cover up any of the words. So I'm going to add the E6000. I'm going to add a little bit of hot glue to get it to stick right now. And I'm going to make sure that it's high enough that it's going to stick under my bow, but it's low enough that it'll come down here. We're going to grab our bow and attach our bow. In that top right hand corner. And then we're going to come in with our little scrap pieces here. And I'm going to do this one just down over here. Actually, I'm going to cut this down a little bit. And if you need to do this, you can do the same thing. Just cut it down to a smaller size. I'm going to put this one on the actual bow. So I'm just ripping off the little shrubs that I don't want. And we're going to stick them on here. And then I'm going to get the other little piece and just put it at a different angle. And then if you wanted to put a little something in the middle, you could as well. And so now we have this portion here. The last thing that we need to do is we need to put the handles on. So I'm going to just put these both at the same direction here. So the handle is going to go on like so. If you want it a little bit shorter, you could do it shorter. We did them kind of at the angle that would be or at the length that would be good. You can just use it as is. But again, I'm going to come in here with the E6000 as well as the hot glue so that it will stay, but it will also be stuck for a long time. So I'm going to do the top and the bottom with the E6000, and I'm going to do right in the middle, I'm going to add the hot glue. And we're just going to center that at the top of our block and pinch it down. So I'm going to do both of these at the same time. I'm just doing a blob and a blob. That was kind of a big blob, but it'll do. And then the hot glue in the middle. And I'm going to hold it down. And again, the E6000 is going to dry over time. The hot glue will get it so it attaches right away. So we'll let that one sit for a minute. We're going to come down and do this one, and then we're just going to attach the bottom at the bottom of our block. More hot glue. And give it a good push. And we'll do the same with this one. All right, and from there, we are going to let them sit, but you should end up with an adorable little coffee sign. So here is our rub-on transfer one. Show you this way. And then we also have our decoupage one. So there we go. That's as easy as it is to make your coffee block signs. I would let it dry like this, let it cure so that that glue can really stick before you mess with it. Obviously, we don't want to hold it by this. That's just for decoration. But I'm going to let these sit like this so that they can dry overnight before I mess with it too much. But that's how easy it is to make your signs. Make sure that if you do create these, do your kit, share in the group. Also, you can share, if you share on social media, you can tag at Christian Craft Paper, and then that lets us know that you shared your project. But I want to thank you for doing this tutorial with me today. I look forward to seeing what you make. And until next time, happy crafting.